Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Revenue Growth Help Desk. I'm Matt Scherz, CEO of SBI, and here with my longtime buddy, Steve Blum. Steve leads the entire commercial function at a software company that probably everybody knows, which is Autodesk. But, Steve, for those who don't know Autodesk and the scope and span of your role, maybe you can give that heading, and then we'll jump into a pretty exciting show here around talent and the commercial model and what people are doing post-pandemic, but something that you've been doing before the pandemic, which I think is why Autodesk is such a valuable entity. So great to see you, pal.
Yeah, great to see you as well, Matt. Thanks for inviting me, and great to do this again with you. And I would like to think everybody knows who Autodesk is, but I find some folks know more about our products like AutoCAD than even the name of the company, Autodesk. But for those that do not have familiarity with Autodesk is we create software that enables our customers, who we view as innovators, to really build a better world. And so all the things practically that you see outside, whether it's a car, a cell phone, a building, a highway, a movie, maybe you used to go into movie theaters, now you're watching lots of streaming movies, all the special effects that you see in those things, those are customers using Autodesk software. So think about pretty much anything that wasn't made by God may have been made by Autodesk software is probably the best way to think about it.
That actually, you might have just created a new brand promise around who it wasn't made by God. So that is well said. So Steve, you and I are recording this show at a time where people and commercial leaders like yourselves that are in the enterprise, but also middle market companies owned by private equity firms. A lot of people are sitting back assessing their new commercial models. And they're saying, okay, we're on the back end of the pandemic. We've got to, quote, get back to growth. What are the bets we need to make? I asked you to come and do this show based on the questions we've been receiving around how to think through this, because I thought you were uniquely qualified to talk about what you were doing before the pandemic, just as part of evolving the business at Autodesk. Then we're going to get into kind of post. So maybe just talk about the shift that Autodesk went through strategically, why you guys did that.
Yeah, so Autodesk is not a new company. We're almost 40-year-old company, and one of the first companies to develop our software on a PC as opposed to a workstation. And that meant that long ago we sold perpetual licenses, one box at a time, literally one box at a time. Innovation for us began when we were a 20-year-old company and started doing maintenance as opposed to just selling updates to our software. And from there, about 6 or 7 years ago, we recognized the world was going to go cloud, and our industry hadn't gone, but we knew customers were going to demand we go there, and we wanted to actually use this as an opportunity to innovate, to lead. And so we moved away from selling perpetual licenses and maintenance, and we completely altered our business model. We went into selling subscriptions, we developed new cloud-based offerings, and we moved our enterprise business agreements to consumption-based models. And in fact, some of our cloud offerings are even consumption-based. So we are now totally out of selling perpetual licenses. Maintenance literally just ended, and we're really a cloud and a SaaS-based subscription company. So that was a huge transition, because how we were doing things before, Matt, and how we had to do things in a world of subscription and cloud were very, very different.
Yeah. So Steve, if you just think about that strategically, right, and you think about a corporate strategy and what, Andrew and the board's responsibilities are to shareholders is to obviously generate a return, right? I mean, very simple. Revenue growth strategy sits right below that corporate strategy. And while I'm sure there's been some inorganic moves, organically, the decision you made was we're going to shift the revenue model, right? Exactly as you described, right? Start selling subscriptions. So we like to say right next to that revenue model shift is a go-to-market model shift. So I guess as a way of sort of orienting, how did that shift the model? And then we're going to get into talking a little bit about talent that was required to do that. Because Steve, that's one of the top questions we're getting right now is the team I had up to March of 2020 versus the team I need in 22. It's very different. My field sales is disrupted. Do I need more inside sales? What type of managers do I need? What's the horsepower? How do I enable those people? So maybe hit go-to-market model first, and then you and I can go into the next segment on the talent.
Yeah, and you're exactly right in what you just said. In fact, one of the things I'd add is that way back when we were selling just our perpetual licenses, we were predominantly selling indirect. So we were selling almost everything through resellers. Our model now is we've gotten to the point where we're now 30% direct and 70% indirect, and that's continuing to evolve. Our long-range plan with no end date is to get closer to 50-50. And the direct business is coming from engaging directly with our largest customers in those EBAs with our named accounts, as well as growing a sizable and fast-growing digital business, digital sales business. So our engagement model and our go-to-market changed a lot. And I share that because in the past we had sellers, we had outside sellers, no inside sellers. We had a lot of partner managers, and that kind of supported the old business model. As we transitioned to selling subscriptions, cloud-based offerings, and consumption-based models, we had to do numerous things. First of all, we had to build out an enterprise class sales organization. So we had to build out this named account team that was engaging directly and strategically with our largest customers, and had a whole different business model to bring to them. And one thing I should add, Matt, you and I've talked about this before, but we had to do a complete customer segmentation to go figure out what was our go-to-market approach in each of these segments. And you and your team actually helped us with that model. And to this day, we're leveraging that model to define the different elements of our go-to-market. So we went direct with our named accounts. We developed account-based sales teams as well for inside sellers in our mid-market and inside account-based sellers for our strategic territory. And then we have the actual territory business. So we needed to actually rethink the types of roles. We had to build inside sales teams from scratch because we didn't have them. 7 years ago, no inside sales. Today, inside sales is one of the largest groups that we have, and we have them globally in different hubs. We knew that we couldn't just make an initial sell like we did with a perpetual license and then leave the customer on their own. We needed to make sure our customers were successful in adopting and using the subscription so that they would automatically want to renew. And in fact, better than that, we wanted to continue to expand the usage, sell new offerings, higher value offerings. So a few years ago, we didn't even have a customer success organization. And now we have a customer success organization that has a customer success management organization. They have dedicated support specialists for our largest accounts, technical support specialists for everyone else. We're doing things both digitally as well as with human interaction. We have a consulting team that's working with our named accounts. So a renewals team that's responsible for driving renewals in the territory. So again, we shifted all of the way we go to market by transitioning from that old perpetual license company to being a subscription cloud consumption-based company.
So, I mean, it's such a fascinating use case, Steve, and it's easy for you and I in 2021 to sit and opine about, the vision you all had because it's worked out incredibly well for your shareholders and for the company. But I guess to kind of put a pin in this first section for the audience, for the viewers and the listeners. So problem statement, right? I got to continue to build shareholder value. Autodesk recognizes that, and they're going to shift the revenue model completely. Tired new revenue model. So they build in a new go-to-market model. And you heard Steve articulate that, everything from customer success, right, to the way they thought about direct versus indirect, to the way they thought about the enterprise. And Steve, I'm going slowly because so many of our clients, when you kind of step back to frame the problem statement, they don't recognize it's not like I got to make a little change here, a little change there. When you're changing a revenue model, the go-to-market model has to shift behind it, and that's strategic work. So, all right, so that's kind of piece one. So then, Steve, how did you cascade, if you think about the talent required and the different types of talent in those different components of your commercial team, your worldwide field ops team, how did you size up the capabilities required at the human level? And then the last piece, we'll talk about enablement, but let's talk about the actual human capital. How did you think through that?
Yeah, so we built out, we call it an LRP. We have a long range plan. We have a multi-year plan. It's all based upon assumptions, of course. It's tied to the company strategy, and basically it defines growth and where are we going to grow, how are we going to grow, what are the requirements, and what are the principles and the strategies behind all that. And then we align our resources and really our investments to ensure that we're funding the things that are most important to the model. So, because there's lots to go do, and there's never enough money to go do that. So you better pick the ones that are top priority, and you better know where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, so that when you make your next year plan, you're investing into things that get you along the way. Because anyone can make decisions for 1 year of optimization that could actually take you further away from your destination 3 to 5 years from now. So you have to have the 1 year plan in the context of a multi-year plan. So we've got that. And then we start defining, okay, what kind of requirements do we have from a headcount point of view? What types of roles do we need? We basically define by each of our go-to-market segments, what are all of the responsibilities that need to be done to ensure we're successful with customers and selling more of what we've got, or finding new customers, and then being in a position to support the entire engagement model across the customer success cycle. So we have high net revenue retention rates. We're growing our business. You really need to start with the responsibilities. Don't start with titles and roles, because sometimes those get confused. So define the responsibilities, then define, okay, who's best equipped to do those responsibilities? And we were thinking about Autodesk employees as well as partner employees, because there's no reason to duplicate it. If we define the role of a sales rep at Autodesk and they're doing exactly the same things as one of our VAR reps, then we've got four-legged sales calls. We're not getting efficiencies, we're not getting coverage, we're not getting the capacity that we need, and we're being very ineffective. So we define the responsibilities, then we define the roles that are best positioned for executing on those responsibilities, and then we hire to those profiles. And I will say, this is something really important, Matt. We knew going in, when we started this process, we had folks on the team. They may have been really good people, and may have been really successful in the past, but they weren't equipped to do the roles defined by the responsibilities in the future. And in those cases, we had to figure out, could we help some grow and expand, or do we just make some changes? And we did both. We made a lot of changes. We ended up having a lot of folks leave the organization, and we brought folks in that either had the skill sets and the capabilities that we needed, or were more apt to be developed into those types of performers. So you really need to be really crystal clear on where you're going, what has to happen to get there, and then you define what type of talent do I need in order to execute on those things.
So Steve, one of the things I take from what you just said that I think is a key takeaway for the audience is you put the customer at the center and you thought about the experience, customer experience first. My view from the outside is you also looked at it across human channel and digital channel. We're seeing a lot of people right now trying to play catch up digitally, Steve, and not just catch up digitally like, ooh, I'm going to do inside sales, but like, what is the go-to-market tech stack that supports and underpins the right customer experience, but also the right seller experience? And then you mentioned VARs. The way that you guys support your partners, your ecosystem at Autodesk, my opinion, is second to none. So you kind of create those performance conditions of success with the key stakeholders in the middle. Oftentimes we see people do it a little insular, right? Where they're focused like, we're going to shift this person from this role or this role. They don't think about it holistically, including partners and the entire ecosystem. So I think that's a big takeaway relative to how you guys did it. So Steve, then how did you think about the enablement needs, right? If you think about like the day-to-day capabilities of sellers and the day-to-day, like, how do I make a rep who's doing $1 million a year do $1.2 million? What do I support him or her with? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so first you have to know where you are, to know, how are you performing today, to get a baseline, and then be able to understand where should we be and how do we drive those improvements. And we did a lot of work in that area. And then figured out where are the gaps or where are the opportunities that we can drive greater enablement to get greater efficiencies. And we actually, each year we have our own internal efficiency targets. We set goals on how much more effective and efficient do we want our sellers to be. Our business has been growing, but the interesting thing is, while the business is so much bigger now than it was before, we're not scaling the sales force at the same pace, which means we've got to be able to be more effective while we're adding more people in order to continue to drive that growth. So driving more enablement, getting more from each of the folks that we have is really important. And we've defined some of the areas where we said, okay, these are the things that are most important to our success, to how we engage with our customers. And then we build out programs to help our teams get better at what they're doing. And we invest in that enablement to make it happen. One of the things that you and I've talked a lot about is, when we pick something to go scale at Autodesk, we kind of scale at a larger level sometimes than most other companies. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 different go-to-market segments that are account-based sales and marketing segments. And, most companies would try to do that for hundreds of accounts. And, because we've talked about it, I mean, we're at the point where we're trying to do tens of thousands of accounts in that account-based sales and marketing approach. And that required, as one example, retooling or reskilling our processes and our capabilities, not just for our sales teams. It includes the sales teams. It includes our customer success organization. It includes our marketing teams, because we have to do things both digitally as well as through human interaction in that ABSM segment. So we had to retrain folks. We had to develop new processes. And we also had to define what are the things that we should be doing with people and what are the things that can be done digitally. And the more we could do digitally, the greater we could scale, the better we could drive efficiencies. We could get to so many more customers through a digital means than a human means. So we had to be really smart about where are the things that humans need to be involved and what things could be done digitally. And that's ultimately how you can drive great scale.
Yeah. Steve, I'll tell you something that we see it's might be an embedded takeaway in what you said, but I want to capture it for the viewers and listeners. You didn't just focus on enabling sales. You focused on enabling marketing, and you focused on enabling customer success to drive what I would call sort of commercial consistency. So for those that are listening, the way clients and prospects are buying or customers are buying now is integrated between marketing, sales, and success. Yet most people, Steve, are still putting most of the enablement dollars into the direct seller. So kind of in the middle of the supply chain. They're forgetting the ends of the barbell. So it's creating an inconsistent experience. And if you think about value creation, value is getting driven upfront. How I engage with you as a prospect, marketing-wise, it's getting driven on the back end. And you can make the argument, more value is getting delivered around net retention. And if I stay and expand, because the impact of that dollar compared to the new dollar. So I guess my last piece, Steve, any advice you would give to your peers who are struggling to get training dollars or budget dollars to train the front end or the back end, as opposed to the additional or the traditional, like, I got to train the sellers with a better sales methodology?
Yeah, like you said it really well, Matt. Think about all of the parts of your organization that are interacting with customers. They all need to be enabled, especially as you're evolving your business models, as you're evolving your go-to-market. So think about them all, because some of them are spending more time with their customers than others. I would say many of us have our customer success organizations representing the face and voice of our companies more frequently to customers than our sales teams even do. So it's important to think about all of them. And the one other thing I will add, it was a learning for us, Matt, it's not just important to enable and train all of those different elements, all those different roles to be effective in the new model. We also have to train them on how they work together. And how do they work as a team? Because the customer doesn't want to think about our organizations. They want to think of us as as their partner, and it's a singular partner, not the organizational map behind the partner. So we've learned that not only do we have to train folks to become really good at what they do, but they also have to be really good on the team and work together as one team. When you do that well, that's the secret sauce to providing a great experience to your customers.
I love that insight, because if I'm an Autodesk customer, pardon my French, I don't give a shit if you're in customer success or sales. I want to have a great experience with your software, because I've hired it for my job to be done. That is a great point. Steve, always great to see you. We could keep going, but I know you're on high demand, and I'll let you run. But thanks for spending time with us and sharing your insight.
You got it. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
And for those that are listening, quick recap, right? Number one, revenue model shift requires you to really dig into the entire go-to-market model. So that was kind of segment one. Steve explained that. Number two, what are the talent requirements for a frictionless customer experience, starting at marketing, including sales, partners, VARs, all the way through success? And then number three, a big one, and it was a great reminder for me, is how do you get everybody to work as a team, both digitally and in analog, so that the customer notices no friction and they are delighted. So until next time, wish you good luck as you try and make your number.